Hey, what's up guys? Matt here from Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson. So I wanted to do kind of an in-depth Street Glide comparison video. There are 3 different Street Glide models. Really the bulk of the video is going to be on the Street Glide Special, but I wanted to kind of show you guys the differences between the Street Glide Special, the Standard, the Cvo. There's also the Electra Glide Standard that's out now that is very similar to a Street Glide, just kind of a stripped down version of the Street Glide that I'm going to be kind of tying into the comparison as well, so you guys can get a good idea of what separates these very similar Batwing models and hopefully choose the best bike for you. Alright guys, so let's jump into this. So I've got 4 different Street Glides here. Actually 3 are Street Glides, one's an Electra Glide Standard, but they're all Batwing touring chassis bikes, and I'm going to be drawing comparisons between the 4 of them because I feel like if you're shopping for these bikes, you might as well go the entire spectrum of the Batwing fairing bikes. I don't have any limiteds in here, but all the bikes with the Batwing fairing without a tour pack from the factory I have here. So the Street Glide Special, the Street Glide Standard, the Cvo Street Glide, and the Electra Glide Standard. So let's jump in first to the 2020 Street Glide Special. This video, the bulk of the information is going to be on this bike. This is kind of the bike that I'm really highlighting here. This is, of the 4 bikes, this is the bike that we sell the most of these 4. So let's jump into this here. So starting last year in the 2019 model year, they bumped up their Milwaukee 8 Big Twin from a 107 to a 114 on the Street Glide Special. So 18 model year you had a 107, 19 model year you had a 114, and then of course in the 2020 model year you've got the 114 as well. And that is one of the main differences between the Street Glide Special and the Street Glide Standard. The Street Glide Standard still has a 107 cubic inch, and the Special of course has a 114 in it. But if you guys want, check out my Milwaukee 8 video. I did a pretty in-depth video when it first launched in the 2017 model year. But in a nutshell, the Milwaukee 8, when compared to the twin cam, you've got a single cam in the Milwaukee 8. It gets its name from the 8 valves. It's got 4 valves per cylinder, 2 spark plugs per cylinder, and it's just obviously larger displacement, so more power. It's got a precision oil cooling setup where it pipes cooled oil through the hottest part of the engine around the head, so like the exhaust ports, and so it runs cooler as well, less heat radiating up on the rider. But personally, I'm a fan. I have a 2018 Street Glide Special right now, and I've done quite a few miles on that, and so yeah, I'm a big fan. I like it. Here's another change for the 19 model year. You got the Prodigy Wheel. And so it's a new wheel design. Prior to this model year, and like in the 19 and the 18 model year, you have what's called a Talon wheel. Here's a shot of the front fairing. So this is the Rushmore fairing. Came out in the 2014 model year, all redesigned. So it's been out now for about 6 years, but yeah, you can see all the blacked out finishes on the bike. These bikes started coming blacked out from the factory in the 2018 model year. As soon as they started doing that, that was enough that model year to make me pull the trigger on a new Street Glide Special, just because I'm a big fan of the blacked out look, and I think a lot of the newer, younger riders are also a big fan of the blacked out look. And I mean, really, it's not really so much a generation or age thing. It's just kind of a preference thing. There's still a lot of guys that prefer the chrome, which you're actually going to spend a lot less money if you prefer the chrome and just get the Street Glide Standard. If I preferred the chrome to the black, I'd get the Standard, and me personally, I don't think the difference between a 107 to a 114 is really worth getting the black finishes. If I don't like the black finishes, you got about 10% power difference. You also have the stretched bags on the Street Glide Special as well. They are true depth, meaning that if you look inside the bag, it's actually a deeper bag as opposed to just like a cap being put at the bottom. A lot of aftermarket companies are putting caps on the bottoms of the bags just to make it look like a stretched bag, which I think is kind of a cheap shortcut way of doing it. So they are definitely a stretched bag. Here's a shot of the inside of the fairing. Here's another difference between the Street Glide Special and the Standard. The Special has a glossy inner fairing. Here's a shot of the switches here. You can see the TC in the top left-hand corner there. That's for traction control. So this is probably the most dramatic or biggest change this model year, is with the introduction of the RDRS, the Reflex Defensive Rider System. Basically, what that is just a fancy way of saying it's a collection of electronic chassis control items. I'm going to put a link in the top right hand corner to a video that I did that is a comprehensive look at the RDRS. If you're looking at buying a touring bike now or probably in the next couple years, I would definitely check that out because it's going to give you a really good idea of whether or not you want to spend the $995 upcharge it costs to get the RDRS. The RDRS, by the way, is available on all the touring models this year, the 2020 model year, with the exception of the Electra Glide Standard. Here's a shot of the seat. So you had a little bit lower profile seat on the Street Glide Special. The Street Glide, really what this does, guys, when it was first introduced in the 2006 model year, it was all about the style point. It was taking a bike that was notoriously kind of like the old man's touring bike and really turning it into a bike that was sleek, minimalist, kind of that bagger-esque look that's kind of like that custom, street road bagger type of a look that, you can roll down the boulevard with the big wheels, big stereo. And it's just kind of a different mindset and a different rider preferences on these bikes as opposed to the baggers of old. The baggers of old, it was all about, function, storage space, comfort, going out there for the long haul. The Street Glide will certainly do that, but you do make some compromises with the comfort and the functionality with the lower profile seat, shocks, minus the tour pack. And so you basically take away some of the functionality and comfort, and you add a whole bunch of style to it. Here's the left side of the bike. You got the badging on the tank as well. That's unique to the Street Glide Special as well. So the badging is a little bit different from the standard to the special, but everything that can be blacked out on this bike pretty much is, your bars, even like the struts in the rear fender, and it's pretty well blacked out. A couple things that I think that I don't know why they don't black out: the little latches on the saddlebags and the kickstand. I really wish they would black out those two items. So here I am cycling through with the trigger switch, kind of the digital display where the speedometer is. You basically got your odometer, your 2 trip meters, you have a remainder of how many miles you have left over. This right here is a tire pressure monitoring system. Tire pressure monitoring system is one of the things you get with the RDRS. So unless you get that RDRS, you do not have the digital monitoring system on this bike. The RDRS also includes, like I said, traction control. It's got a vehicle hold mode, tire pressure monitoring system, and drag torque slip control. And it's got a 6-axis IMU, inertia measurement unit, which basically is an electronic sensor that senses when the bike is in a lean angle. So it tailors things like your ABS and your traction control based on the lean angle of the bike and kind of where it's at. It also utilizes the wheel bearing sensors as well to measure wheel speed against actual road speed, and it will adjust the torque to the rear wheel accordingly to make sure you have traction. But yeah, definitely watch my RDRS video to get the gist of that new collection of electronic chassis control items that you get with the RDRS. So here I am just kind of demonstrating the locking mechanism of the bike. So touring bikes are kind of a 2-in-1 when you lock both your ignition and your fork on that fob at the top of the forks there. Turn the forks to the left and that locks your fork. And put the key in and you unlock it, and the little fob in the center console area pops up, and then you have access to turn the ignition on again. Your forks will go free. So the infotainment system as well is brand new, starting last year. So in the 2014 model year, when they came out with the Project Rushmore, that's when they released the infotainment, the GT 6.5 GT system, which was a huge step for Harley-Davidson, and that's when they got rid of the CD player and all the old tech and everything. And in the 2019 model year, they brought out a newer reiteration of that, and they call it the GTS 6.5 GTS system. And it's a lot faster now. You've got Gorilla Glass on there now. It's a higher resolution, less glare, whole new software, new processor. It's quicker, and it's just the user interface is just a lot more intuitive, easier to use. Here we are at the Street Glide Standard. You can see you've got on the front there, you've got the Enforcer wheels, 19-inch wheel in the front, and you got all the chrome finishes on here. So this is a 107 Milwaukee 8. I frequently get asked if there's a big dramatic power difference between the 107 and a 114, and really it equates to about 10% more power in the 114. You get about 8 more horsepower and about 12 foot-pounds of torque more out of the 114, so not a huge dramatic difference. I can notice it a little bit, especially out on the freeway from like 60 to 80 roll on. You notice the 114 has a little bit more oomph, but I have a 107 personally, and the 107 is still plenty of power. So it's nice to have the 114, but in my opinion, it's not mandatory. This is what they call the Enforcer 2 wheel, like I already mentioned. So this is kind of a new thing that they did in the 2020 model year. Here's a shot of the shifter as well. They got rid of the heel shifter, kind of a big outcry by the riding community for getting rid of that heel shifter. Harley, I think, was just trying to eliminate some of the waste. There's a lot of people that don't prefer the heel shifter, and so they got rid of it. If you buy a bike from us, by the way, we just give it to you for free. It's not a big deal. Yeah, the wheels on the bike this year, they call the Enforcer 2 because in the past with the Enforcer wheels, the pair of them have always come with a 19 front and a 16 rear. Now you've got an 18-inch Enforcer wheel in the rear, which I think looks a lot better. You are eliminating some of the tire sidewall, so real marginally, I think you take away a little bit of the plushness of the ride in the back. But again, it's it's going to be hard to really tell the difference. So here's another notable difference between the Street Glide and the Street Glide Special. You have the bags here. They're just the standard, regular depth bags on the Street Glide Standard that have been that way for a long time. And here you go to these stretched bags. For a long time, the stretch bags were available exclusively on the Cvo models. And then when the Road King Special came out halfway through the 2017 model year, we saw those stretched bags on a non-CVO model, which was kind of nice because I do like the look, especially with how they wrap around the exhaust in the rear. Kind of gives it more of that custom bagger look to it. And here's a shot of the infotainment system again. The infotainment system, by the way, that you get on the Street Glide Standard is identical if you get the upgrade. So this is very important. You have to pay $895 upcharge to get the premium radio, as they call it, on the Street Glide Standard. If you don't have that option, you don't pay that upcharge, then you get the 4.3-inch screen, which does not have navigation in it, and the screen is just smaller, so less viewable area. It's also not touch screen compatible, so you have to use the joysticks for everything. Yeah, if you're someone that doesn't really care at all about the electronics at all, okay, cool. Don't pay the extra money. Either that or just get the Electra Glide Standard that doesn't have a radio at all. But if you're not a big techie guy that uses the GPS and all the other finer details and things like that, you don't have your eyes looking down at that screen very often, maybe don't pay the $895. Me personally, at our dealership, I order all of my standard Street Glides and Road Glides as well with the $895 premium radio, and that's just because I feel like more people prefer it than not. And even if you don't prefer it, when you go to resell your bike, it's a huge sore thumb if you don't have it on your bike. When I see bikes come in on trade that people bought from other dealerships with the smaller screen, I just cringe because it's just really hard in the resale market to sell that bike with the smaller, crappier screen. Like, nobody wants it. But here's a shot of the badging as well. This is midnight blue, by the way. This color is pretty awesome. It's really dark, but if you do see it in the direct sunlight, it is blue. So I just want to show like kind of the comparison between the two badges right here. So the Street Glide Special, a little bit more of a modern industrial looking badge, and on the Street Glide Standard, more of a classic badging that I feel like kind of goes more with like the chrome look and everything. But yeah, I like the badging on both of them. So let's move over to the Cvo Street Glide now. The Cvo Street Glide, you bump up quite a bit in pricing. And just to kind of go over pricing again on the two prior bikes that I've already talked about. Street Glide Special, you're looking at about $27,500. With a color, you're looking at about $28,000. And the Street Glide Standard, they start at about $23,000, about $23,500 with something with a color other than vivid black. And the Cvo Street Glides, you're now at about $42,000, $43,000, depending on the model year. So this is a 19 model year, which I hate doing this, guys. If I'm going to show a 2020 vehicle video, I like to have the right year, because there were some pretty big changes in the Cvo Street Glide from 19 to 20, namely the speaker I'm showing right here. In the lower leg fairings, there is no speakers in the lower leg fairings in the 2020 model year. They eliminated that. So in the 19s and even the 18s, you had a 6-speaker setup, and now you have a 4-speaker setup in the 2020s. You have the big 117 cubic inch engine in the Cvo as well, and all the really cool detail and everything in this engine with the highlighted red lower rocker box covers. Of course, you have the fancy two-tone paint on these, and you have the badge on the side of the fuel tank there that is probably the most coveted badge in the history of Harley-Davidson Motor Company. We have people trying to come in and order these. It is a VIN restricted part, meaning you have to have the VIN off of your personal bike to even order this badge. And if we sell it to you and you don't have the proper VIN and paperwork, we can get fined $10,000. So yeah, it's funny. I don't even know all this just because we've had so many people try to get the badges for their personal bikes, and obviously we can't give it to you, we can't sell it to you, but there's a bunch of knockoff companies that are making them. Here's a shot of the rear fascia. You've got kind of that really cool signature tail lighting where you've got the tail lights in between the saddlebags and the fenders. On the CVOs, it's been that way since about 2009 when the Road Glide CVO first came out, which changed the whole CVO world, which I think was a very significant bike in Harley-Davidson's history. Which, by the way, if you have a 2009 Cvo Road Glide, kudos to you. Hang on to that bike. I think those bikes are really, really cool. Anyways, here's a shot again on the Cvo Street Glide. You've got hand warmers. You've got the Kahuna collection on here. I'm always amazed when I hear people like comments that they can online or in real life or whatever about how they feel like you pay a lot for the CVO, but the stuff you get on the CVO, doesn't justify the price. We actually went through the exercise and priced everything out. If you were to try to turn a Street Glide into a CVO in parts and labor and everything, you're looking at about $36,000. You definitely, if you like all the stuff on the CVO, buy the CVO. You're going to save money. The bike's going to retain its value a lot better because all the values are all recognized from the factory, whereas if you add a bunch of accessories to your bike, now it's not really recognized by the banks and by the model designation and everything. It's only really, accessories are only valued based on the end user or the customer or the buyer's own two eyes and kind of their knowledge of what it costs to do certain things like stereo equipment and bars and things like that. So that's a common question. Sorry guys, I'm kind of digressing here, but it's a common question I get from people when they're trading in their bikes. It's very common for people to spend a bunch of money on their Harley. They go to trade it in. They say, well, I've got $10,000 into my bike. Well, my general rule of thumb is you're going to get about 10 to 15% of what you spent on your bike and accessories back when you go to resell it or trade it in. So here's a couple goodies I'm pulling out of the saddlebags here. So manuals, little toolkit here. I pulled out some bag liners a second ago, these little storage bag liners. This is some leather dressing for the seat there, leather protectant. You can see the speakers in the tops of the saddlebag lids as well. Back here is one of the amps. You've actually got three 300 watt amps in this bike. So it's 150 watts per channel. So one of the amps powers the two rear saddlebag lid speakers. Another amp powers the lower leg fairing speakers. And you got another amp in the fairing that powers the speakers that are facing back at you in the fairing. Yeah, I'll package all that back up. So yeah, you do get some extra goodies with the CVOs, those bag liners, special keys, which I'll show you in just a minute. And you also get the headset as well. That's something that's kind of cool about the CVOs is you get the WIM on this bike, which is the wireless headset interface module. It basically allows the wireless headset to talk with the radio. There's a cover too I just pulled out. It's a CVO cover. Here's the key. The keys are really cool in the CVOs as well. You've got these buttons where you can lock and unlock remotely the saddlebags, and you have this little flip out key. The flip out key obviously is just used for the fork lock. It's kind of a difference with the CVO as well. Here's a kind of a cool thing too. So it's basically sense that the tire pressure is low on this bike, and so it asks you if you want to be routed to the nearest service station to get your tire pressure filled up. So the fourth and final bike that I think is real comparable to the Street Glides is the Electra Glide Standard. So this was a new model release halfway through the model year in the 2019 model year, so still relatively new. However, this is a reintroduction of a model they've had in the past. The Electra Glide Standard ran for a long time in the early 2000s, and I think the last year they had it was 2009, and in 2010 they scrapped it because they felt like it was probably too much of a reiteration with the Street Glides and everything. But I think they brought it back out for another reason, and that was to hit a low price point on a faired model touring bike. So yeah, you have the same batwing fairing that you have on the Street Glides. However, things like the finishes on the engine, you have a lot of raw aluminum parts, so not quite as fancy or as premium finishes as you would like either the Street Glides, and real simplistic paint and badging on there and everything. You can only get this bike in vivid black. So really this bike is built all around really accomplishing the lowest price tag possible at just under $19,000. So your regular standard depth bags, your regular tail light. See, as you'll notice, it has that big red tail light in the rear, which the Street Glide doesn't. The Street Glide just has a lot more of these sleek characteristics or sleek features on it. Things like the mirrors on the fairing as opposed to the stems on the handlebars. Things like that are present on the Street Glide. You don't really get on the Electra Glide line. And they're really the biggest difference here, this big gaping hole in the inner fairing where the radio would be. You can, however, always put a radio in there. The radios, if you buy them out of the catalog, I want to say are about $1,900 if you want to get the GTS system and put them in here, and they're all pre-wired for it as well, so it's kind of a plug and play. You also got to buy the speakers as well. Here's your solo seat, which, speaking of speakers, something I forgot, the Street Glide Special comes with 6.5-inch speakers, and the Street Glide Standards come with 5 1/4-inch speakers. So a little bit nicer speakers on the Street Glide Special as well. And then the Cvo Street Glide, you've got those Boom Audio Stage 2 6.5-inch speakers with the tweeters and everything, and they're a completely different level. The stereo system, the Boom Audio 2 system on a Cvo Street Glide, is the best stereo system you can get on a factory production motorcycle in the world. Here's a shot of the front wheels. This is called an impeller wheel. It's a 17-inch front wheel, 16-inch rear. So once again, not quite the big wheels that give it that custom look that you're going to find on the Street Glide as well. Just more of a non-flashy, more of a workhorse-oriented type of build on this bike, and just kind of just stripped down to the essentials. It's interesting though, because immediately when these bikes came out, we sold a few, but it's just funny that I always hear all this chatter on the internet about how, oh, Harley-Davidson is too expensive. If they had lower prices, then they would sell more. And they do it. They come out with this bike, and now they're just kind of sitting, at least at our dealership. People would rather spend the extra money and get the Street Glide. So yeah, I just don't believe in, sorry, I'm digressing again. I don't believe in the whole price objection. I think Harley-Davidson needs to be competitive, and for what they produce and the quality of product they produce, they're extremely competitive. But just a lot of people trash on Harley for not having lower price tags. But when they come out with a bike that's in line with pricing that I feel like people would pay for this type of a product, then those bikes don't sell. So I don't know, it's kind of interesting. I just don't believe in the whole pricing. I think people that buy Harleys recognize the value that they have and are willing to pay for the stuff that they get out of a Harley-Davidson, like the quality and everything that they get. So anyways, yeah, there you have it. If you're someone that just wants the motor, the frame, the fairing, then get the Electra Glide Standard, and you have really the general makeup of what makes up a Street Glide. And there you have it, guys. Sorry, this is kind of a long-winded video. This is going to be way too long, by the way. But thanks for sticking in there. If you're, really want to get all the information you can on your Street Glide and really your Batwing fairinged touring bikes, with the exception of the Limited. And let's take these bikes out and take them for a rip, guys. Hey guys, Matt here. So I want to go over some of the most commonly asked questions I get about the Street Glide Special. A lot of people just kind of want me to get to the point and really give them the pertinent information when they're looking to buy one of these bikes. So this is the bike I personally ride. I've actually had two Street Glide Specials now. I had a 2014, and most recently the bike I ride currently is a 2018 Street Glide Special. So this is my favorite bike currently. I love it. Had a lot of saddle time on this bike, and so yeah, I'm pretty familiar with everything. So in the 2018 model year, that's when the Specials started to come all blacked out and everything. So the Standard has the chrome, like we already went over in the video, but the Special has the blacked out features. New this year for the 2020 model year, you have the option of the RDRS, Reflex Defensive Rider System, which is basically a package or a collection of electronic chassis control items. It's $995 if you want it from the factory. People ask me a lot if they can add it after the fact. No, you cannot. You cannot add the RDRS after the fact. So if you want it, definitely get it. You've also got the introduction of the HD Connect this year as well, which is the cellular connectivity with your cell phone. You download the Harley-Davidson app, you pair your phone with your bike, both Bluetooth and with the HD Connect. And once you have it connected with HD Connect, you can then get alerts if your bike is disturbed, if maybe a thief is trying to steal it or something like that. It alerts you on your phone. You can also see on your phone like the vitals of the bike, the fuel level. If you have the RDRS, you can see your tire pressure and things like that. So it kind of gives you a snapshot of the vitals on your bike remotely from your phone. You can also see the location of your bike at all times, no matter where it is in the world. So kind of a cool couple little things there. So yeah, we're kind of comparing in this video the Special between the Standard and also the CVO. So really it's going to kind of determine, okay, where do you see value and kind of what's your budget. So with the special, you spend about $4,000 more. On the standard Street Glide this year, you get ABS standard. So in the past, you've paid $795 for the ABS on the Street Glide standard. That's no longer an upcharge there. You have the option of the premium radio for $895 on the Street Glide standard if you want the bigger 6.5 GTS screen as opposed to the smaller 4.3 screen. And you also have the option of the RDRS on there as well, but ABS and cruise and all that stuff is standard now. Cruise has been standard for a long time now. But a lot of times people ask me as well when they're looking at a Street Glide, they're also maybe looking at a road glide as well. So let's talk real quick. I get asked a lot about my personal preference. Obviously, I have a Street Glide Special 2018 and kind of the thought process that went into that for me choosing this bike over a road glide. So personally, really the only difference between the two bikes is the fairing and kind of the leverage on the bars and everything that comes along with the fairing. The fairing on a Street Glide is fork mounted, so it swivels with the forks, whereas on a road glide, the fairing is frame mounted, so the fairing always stays pointed straight. I feel like the road glide fairing right now is kind of the trendy fairing that all the cool kids are buying right now. We still sell plenty of these Street Glides, but for the first time since I can remember, the road glide sales have actually surpassed the Street Glide sales. So it feels like, for the longest time, the batwing fairing has always kind of been the majority choice, whereas I feel like we're kind of seeing a shift now, especially with the younger generation, getting the road glides more. Like I said, when they redesigned that fairing, they redesigned both of these fairings with the Rushmore project. So the batwing fairing got redesigned in the 2014 model year. That was the only model year they didn't have the road glide fairing, and then the very next year in the 2015 model year, they redesigned the road glide fairing with part of the Rushmore project. So yeah, since that redesign on the road glide fairing with the Rushmore project, there's been, we've seen a steady climb in road glide sales during that period of time. So yeah, I'd say the road glide fairing I feel like is definitely the trendy fairing right now. But personally, my personal decision, I like the Street Glide fairing just because I like the batwing fairing and a little bit smaller surface area. The road glide fairing, it's bigger, it's bulkier, you have more surface area there, which is a little bit better functionally for blocking winds, but I just like the smaller footprint of the Street Glide fairing. And I just feel like the bars and the way they mount is a little bit, I just like the leverage a little bit better than the road glide. The road glide's kind of a tiller top-down feel, which is fine. I may actually get a road glide on my next bike, but for right now, I still kind of prefer the Street Glide, but it's pretty close for me. Like I said, I really kind of struggled with whether or not to get the Street Glide or the road glide on my last purchase. So the Cvo Street Glide, I've always kind of wanted a Cvo Street Glide. I think in the last couple of years especially, Harley's really upped their game with the CVOs, both the road glide and the Street Glide. This year they have new wheels called the Mayhem wheel on the Cvo Street Glide that I really like. And I just like the paint and kind of the style they're going with in recent years as well. But I may get a CVO in the future, but I've always kind of struggled with the CVO just because the CVO is one of those bikes that you buy, it's all done. It's for the guy that wants to just buy the bike, maybe change the bars and exhaust, maybe a couple other things, and ride it. And it's gonna hold its value better than if you were to dump 20, 30 grand into a regular Street Glide and ride it around. But it's not your own. There's plenty of CVOs out there. So for me, I always want to make my bike somewhat unique and kind of put my own twist on it and build it up. That's kind of an element of owning a Harley that I like and I appreciate. And I think a lot of people want to just kind of add the parts that they want and make it look the way they want instead of just buying it right out of the box. So it's kind of a preference thing. So you do get the bigger engine on the CVO, the 117 as opposed to the 114. But quite frankly, the 117, I feel like there's less of a margin now as far as power goes between the regular OEM Street Glide and Street Glide Special than the CVO Street Glide when the twin cam was around. You had a 103 compared to the 110. The power difference was a lot more significant. So really what I tell people is, yeah, the power is nice. Yeah, the 117 is cool, but really, if I were to make a decision and justify the money, I'm looking more at the parts, the grips, the floorboards, the heated grips. You've got the WIM in there with the wireless headset. You've got the speakers that are, you know, far and beyond what the speaker system is on the Special here. So, you know, the wheels, all the fancy finishes, the exclusivity. So there's a lot that goes into CVOs that if you want all that stuff, then, you know, go the CVO. But yeah, personally, I wanted to kind of do my bike up the way I wanted it, and so I went with, you know, a Special. So a Standard, I feel like the Standard sales have dropped considerably at our dealership since they started blacking them out in 2018. Now you have the chrome on the Street Glide, which, you know, I always kind of bring that up as an option. I feel like people kind of forget now, and they kind of just think of the Street Glide as not an option anymore, when really you can save $4,000 and you're getting a really nice bike, and a lot of guys still prefer the chrome. We sell a lot more Specials now compared to the standard Street Glide, and I feel like just more of the riding community now just prefer the blacked out finish. But if you're someone that wants to black out the bike, you know, we get the question sometimes, well, I'll just buy the Standard and black it out later. I don't recommend that. You're gonna spend way more money tearing your bike down, powder coating all the parts, putting it back together, than you would if you just bought the Special in the first place. So yeah, if you want it blacked out, you like that look, definitely spend the extra, you know, $4,000 approximately and just get the Special. So that's another big question I get. New this year as well, I'm kind of bouncing around here. New this year, they have the Prodigy Wheel. So you got an 18-inch in the, or excuse me, 19-inch in the front, 18-inch in the rear. It's called the Prodigy Wheel. Last year, in the 18 model year and the 19 model year, they had what's called a Talon wheel. So a little bit different style there. Personally, at first, I didn't like the Prodigy too much. I felt like it kind of looked like a spoke wheel, and it wasn't really like, didn't really fit on a big heavy touring bike like this. But the more I'm around it, the more I see it, I actually like it more and more. So it's definitely growing on me, and I think a lot of people have said that as well. It's a wheel that kind of grows on you a little bit. But yeah, the Talon wheel is cool too. I really like the Mayhem wheels on the 2020 Cvo Street Glides. But a couple other things you guys should know too when you're thinking about maybe a Street Glide. Out on the freeway with the fairing there, it makes just a 120% difference than if you're riding like a soft tail without any type of wind protection. Even if you have a windshield, it's still never as good as these fairings. So, you know, when Andrew and I get out there on the freeway and we blast it up to 80 real quick, it doesn't even feel like you're doing that speed. You know, it feels like you're doing 40 on a surface street, just because this fairing just deflects so much wind. And you know, I did a video recently on the Fat Bob where I was taking it up to high speeds out on the freeway, and just the amount of effort you have to exert just to keep your torso upright and just to fight the winds is just, it's just fatiguing. And on a long ride, it's just, I would not want to take out like a Softail or any other bike without some type of fairing there. So if you're someone that enjoys longer rides, especially out on the open highway, 65 miles an hour plus out on the open highway, I always recommend a touring chassis bike with a fairing, or Road King with a windshield. Although the Road King windshield, I feel like is only going to be about 60 or 70% of what the fairing is going to give you in the way of wind deflection. But then you add on top of that the radio and the infotainment system on the Street Glide and the Road Glide. And for me, if you're a guy that is on the highway for more than 50% of the time, I usually always recommend and prefer something with a fairing. Yeah, those are kind of the main questions I get. The suspension on all the Specials and even the standards like Street Glides and Road Glide Standards is the lowered touring suspension. So I feel like one thing that people really expect that maybe don't always get is the overall ride comfort. These are comfortable bikes, especially when compared to the motorcycle world as a whole. But you know, people have high expectations of the touring chassis bike in the Harley-Davidson world, and I feel like sometimes these lowered touring bikes don't hit that expectation. So, you know, maybe if you get one of these bikes, think about a taller shock, think about a different seat. For $300 or $400, you can get a different seat and really improve the ride comfort a lot, especially for a passenger. For a passenger, I mean, you're going to be comfortable in this seat for maybe about an hour. Of course, it depends on their age and pain threshold and everything else, but yeah, seat makes a big difference. Lengthening the shocks in the rear makes a big difference as well. Of course, there's a bunch of different shock options out there. If you're someone that rides with a passenger frequently, does a lot of overnighters a lot, you might want to consider a Limited. You know, Limited, you have the same Batwing setup and everything, you just have a lot more comfortable seat, and you also have the Tour Pack. I've said this before, I'll say it again, I see a lot of people that buy a Street Glide because they like the looks of it, but they don't really take into account exactly the type of riding they do, and they do a lot of overnight stuff with their significant other, and they end up outfitting it exactly the same as a limited. They get the tour pack, they're out $2,000 there. They get a bigger seat, that's another $400 there. And they get the better lights, the passing lamps up here. That's another $800 or $900 if you go LED. And so you're gonna save yourself a lot of money if you just go with the limited in the first place. So like I always say as well, really you gotta be honest with yourself about the type of riding you're gonna be doing. And the looks are very important, don't get me wrong, but that shouldn't be your first criteria when you buy a bike. Really, the first criteria is exactly what do you need from a practicality standpoint. What type of riding do you do? Who do you ride with? Where do you go? How long do you ride? What types of roads do you ride on? I was over in Europe, a few months ago for the EICMA show, and their roads are completely different there than they are here in Western United States. It's a lot narrower, smaller roads. You don't get up to the high speeds that we get out here. You don't have as opener roads, and so a smaller bike out there is going to be more conducive to riding. You don't need necessarily like a street glide because you don't get out and do really high speeds as much. So really you got to pay attention to where you live, what type of highway speeds that you ride on frequently, and kind of let that dictate the bike that you end up choosing.
Andrew here from Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson, and today I'm just going to go over some of the things about the Street Glide and the Road Glide and some of the differences in the CVOs and my personal experience with the Street Glide and owning one for about 2.5, 3 years and putting about 20,000 miles on one. I had a 2017 Street Glide Special that I bought here from Laidlaw's, and I did the stage 3 on it and blacked everything out, and this was before the 18s came out, obviously. So right now I don't own the Street Glide Special anymore. I ended up selling it due to personal reasons, but I am putting away some money to get the Pan America. So as of right now, I'm riding a 2017 Dyna Lowrider S because I find myself commuting more than I am riding across country. So that bike is a little bit better fit for me right now. The differences between the Dyna frame and then the touring frame, in my personal experience, I miss the Street Glide. I miss the touring frame. I mean, I miss the hard bags, the radio, the infotainment. But the trade-off for that is the lightweight and the nimbleness of the Dyna. I mean, ripping around on that thing, lane splitting. It's just a hot ride that I really love riding. Obviously, two-up riding on the Dyna is not as comfortable, and I kind of spoiled my girlfriend in that aspect. I threw a backrest and put bags on my Dyna and try to make it a bagger as much as I could, but it's just you can't get that same ride quality and comfort you do out of a touring bike. I did stack 20,000 miles on my Street Glide. I've done a lot of long distance trips, and a lot of people ask me when they come in here and they're tossed up between the Road Glide and the Street Glide, and many of their buddies have told them, oh, get the Road Glide because it's a frame mounted fairing, and in high winds you're just going to get blown all over the place, and on the Street Glide. Honestly, for me, in my experience, the difference between the two is so minute, it just comes down to styling for me. Riding around a parking lot below 10 miles an hour, yeah, you feel the difference between a Road Glide and a Street Glide because the steering is a little lighter on the Road Glide. But other than that, on highway speeds, you couldn't really tell a difference, at least for me. You're not steering with the bars anyway, you're leaning more than you are. So for me, I like the styling for the Street Glide. I like the whole batwing fairing. Doesn't mean I wouldn't own a Road Glide. They're starting to grow on me more and more. And I probably will eventually own one later in the future, but I'm just kind of weighing that between the Pan America. I have a customer that I'm actually talking to right now that is in between a Street Glide Standard and a Street Glide Special. And he's just kind of putting the value between the two. Myself, for one, have experienced that. I've built the blacked out Street Glide Special. I built the 114 out of a 2017. So I personally know the money, the time, the effort, and the labor that goes into building pretty much what you see here. Obviously, I didn't do extended bags, but I did put a lot of money into it. And people were like, Matt had mentioned about buying a standard and then eventually blacking everything out. It's just not worth it. I mean, if you can shell out the money and spend an extra $40 to $80 a month on getting the bike you want on the Special, I say go for it. But the 107 built to a 114. What I did is just a platform that I was really excited about. I loved it. I've ridden the 117 builds. They're great. I haven't tried it in a Street Glide as far as a stage 4 touring bike. But yeah, I was just really happy with it. The power delivery is awesome. Now, if you're looking at a standard and you're asking yourself if it's really worth it jumping to a 114, that's kind of just like a broad question to ask, because it all depends on each individual person and what they're getting the bike for. If you're doing a lot of Sunday trips, you're going to the beach and stuff like that, maybe not. The 107 has way more power than you'll ever need. But if you find yourself on the highway, you're doing long distance trips, you're riding with buddies that have built motors and they have 114s, then maybe I see that justification of doing that. If you find yourself on the highway a lot and you're doing, cross country trips, I suggest the 114 for that small amount of difference of the money jump. I would do it personally. I would, and then kind of wake up the bottom end. In my case, I would maybe do a stage 2 and do a cam. But yeah, that's just kind of where I am with that and everything.
Thanks a lot for watching, guys. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. We try our best to get back to everybody that we can. And if you're looking for a Harley-Davidson, hit us up. We have absolutely no dealer fees, no added dealer markup, no prep, none of that BS. We've had the same transparent pricing for over 60 years. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.